glad you're here. I'm Trisha Wolf, and I'm a therapist and educator who has spent years walking with people through the terrain of trauma and burnout, nervous system overwhelm, and just generally feeling stuck in their lives and supporting them in moving toward realistic change and what they might want for themselves in their life, whether it be more authenticity, more space to feel their emotions, more connection in relationship, more creativity, more presence, or whatever it might be. If you're here, you're probably someone who thinks and feels deeply, just like I do. And you've probably tried a lot of different ways to make change in your life. Or maybe you've studied a lot, you've read a lot, you've done all the things, and you know a lot, but you still can't seem to get unstuck from whatever that feeling is that you have. This project represents something I've wanted to do for a really long time, which is to bring longer, more in-depth education to people who have been in and out of therapy, but just continue to feel stuck. Because what is true and what is not often spoken about in the world of self-help or therapy is that unwinding these deep, embedded survival patterns is not a short-term process. It's very possible to rewire our brain and create new neural pathways, but it's not going to be a 3-step process or a 5-step process or, do some bilateral stimulation or shift your hips and everything unwinds. All of those things are behaviors, and behaviors can come later. We can't drive towards outcomes or behaviors if we want to make change. We have to build up a felt sense of safety in our brain and body to make realistic, tiny changes to allow our brain and body to start to understand that we are safe in this moment. You might be here right now saying, well, I am safe where I am. And that's good news. That's wonderful. Some of us will be safer than others. But I'm talking about a felt sense of safety. And that's something that develops starting from birth and continues on. And that's something that can be disrupted when we grow up in environments where people just can't fully see us or meet our needs. Now, many times people come to see me and they say, I had a great childhood. I had a wonderful childhood. All my needs were met. And that's fantastic, but that's not really what I'm curious about. I'm not necessarily curious about the trauma as people think of it, although of course that's important too. But I'm curious about the more subtle things that happen to many of us, the ways in which our parents were maybe emotionally immature, or maybe there were these developmental ruptures where we were a funny, loud, boisterous, silly child, but our parents didn't have capacity to feel their emotions, and so they couldn't tolerate that within us. Or we were a serious child who loved learning and quiet, and our parents wanted us to be fun and bubbly like them. There are many, many ways that developmental ruptures, environmental ruptures, or attachment disruptions can happen within our childhood. And you might think, oh, great, another place to blame parents. And that's not what we're here to do either. We're not here to only focus on the past. We're here to focus on the present and the future. What's happening for you now in the present? Not to go back and name everything that happened to you when you were a child, though we might want to be curious about how these neural pathways got laid down in your brain, but instead to see how you in the present have taken up what happened in your childhood and enforce it upon yourself now with these subconscious and unconscious rules and regulations and ways we must behave and ways that we must show up in the world and what you want for the future. And we're going to look on the atlas and we're going to see right now there might not be a path between where I am now and what I want for myself, because there's all these roadblocks and other highways that take me off to old ways of being, of making myself small or shutting myself down. But we know we can remap, we can build new roadways. Just like building a new road in the real world, the construction sometimes takes weeks, months, or years, but it's well worth it in the end. I started making content online not because I was drawn toward doing it. In fact, I still find it a little bit scary, but because so much of the content out there around trauma, especially now that being trauma informed is kind of having its moment, oversimplifies or overwhelms. And I wanted to create something that's not glamorous. It's not 10 steps to a new you, but it's realistic and it's honest and it's authentic and it's rooted in the science of how our brains and bodies work. None of us, not me, not you, no one out there will be the exception to the rules of neuroscience about how we can create change in their lives. And part of this is personal for me too. I have gone through my own work as a person with complex trauma, and I have seen how change has to happen in increments. It can't happen purely from insight, and it can't happen purely from behavioral change. It has to happen little tiny bits at a time by building safety and reconnecting to our consciousness, our brain, and our nervous system. What I believe is that every strategy, every symptom, everything we criticize about ourselves is a way that we adapted to protect ourselves, keep ourselves safe, and keep ourselves in connection so that we didn't get voted off the island in our past. Yes, much of it in childhood, but it also happens in our adult lives too. So you are not broken. You are adaptive. You have adapted to survive in the environments you have been in. And for many of us, that meant taking our true selves and hiding them away. Changing these things is possible, but we have to learn to work with our brain and with our biology and not against it. So we learn to notice and not to override. We know that we cannot force safety. It's a bit of an oxymoron to think we could force safety. Like if I put you in a room with a tiger and I said, do a little meditation, and when I come back, let me know how you've increased your sense of safety. It's not possible. Instead, we want to ground here in the present and help our brain learn little bits at a time that while there may have been tigers in the past, there aren't anymore. We don't have to live in the past to update the map. We can create new neural pathways in the here and now. So this is a place for me to share longer form educational content. And I'm letting myself start, even if it's not perfect, even if I don't know exactly where it will go. Maybe there'll be a syllabus. Maybe there won't. Maybe there'll be a consistent timing to the videos. Maybe there won't. But this is something that I feel really passionate about. And I have so many things that I want to share with you about the brain and the body and tracking our body and all of these systems that our body has to keep ourselves safe. But they all center in remapping, that we can take the atlas that we have and we can add new pages and new roads to it. And we can allow those old roads to go unmaintained eventually so that we can move toward what we want for ourselves, whatever it might be. And so if you're not sure if you're ready to begin, that's okay. If you can only take in 1% or 0.01%, that's okay. You don't have to be fully ready. You never, ever are fully ready if you're anything like me. But we can find curiosity and observation and noticing. And that is what we are here to do, to slowly come back into ourselves. I'm so glad you're here.